apples are designed so that they can actually reproduce and multiply and survive in many different places and situations. So every apple has about 5 seeds in, so it will survive in a different place. It won't be the same as the parent apple. If we like this apple, the only way we can guarantee we'll get another apple exactly the same is by grafting. There's the 5 pips. One of those will love growing in the desert, one might like growing in a jungle, one might not. So they're all ready to adapt to whatever situation they happen to be spat out in. Generally these would be called crab apples or wildings. Wildings are the ones that are thrown out. So some might be really lovely. One of those 5 might be. One might be as bitter as hell, one might be as... So what we're doing is we're taking our 1-year-old stick whip that's got our lovely apple on it, and we're going to stick that onto what's called a rootstock, which is another apple tree in this case, but it's that has roots on it already. And what we're going to do is join them together carefully and using a special technique. So you'll join it so they actually fuse together, and then that will become one with that. So that's a successful graft join, which you're going to practice first using some scrap prunings, because this has to be really carefully and accurately done. And I'll run through that in a second. So we're going to try and keep everything marked and labelled and tidy. So pears go on a different kind of rootstock, because pears won't grow on an apple rootstock and apples won't grow on a pear rootstock. You could grow pears on a hawthorn bush, a hedge in your garden, and you could walk past and pick pears when you walk down the country lanes. Or you could graft a nice apple onto a crab apple, and you could go for a walk in your woodland and pick some bramleys off your crab apple tree if you so wish. You can also graft different types of apples onto one apple rootstock, so they're family trees they're called, so you could have an eater, a cooker, a cider, if you should be so bothered. You can also, onto a pear, graft a medlar. So a pear rootstock is actually quince. So it's of the same family, the same genus. So underneath there is our join like that. Okay. In about a month to 2 months' time, that will be fused together and shoots will be coming out of these buds. And what we're going to do is, if it does look like it's taken, you then rub off any growth from the rootstock, because you want to encourage it going up into our scion wood. This is called scion. Behind you is loads of different species, some from here and some from an orchard in Gwiron, so you can pick and choose. So the reason why we graft it onto rootstocks is we've got more control not only of the flavour of the apple or the type of variety of apple or pear, but we can also decide what size the tree is. These quince, they're compatible, but we know that a quince tree is a more shrubby size, so it'll grow to, or a quince A, which is what these are, it'll grow to about 8 to 10 foot, thereabouts. Okay, these apples are grown on ones called MM106, or the ones we've got here, and they'll be about 8 to 10 foot as well, so they're a similar sort of size. That's our apple rootstock, MM106. If it was a hot, sunny, windy day, I'd be worried about the roots drying out. But today, I'm not that fussed. And then when you get home, stick them in a pot, preferably covering up the roots. I'd keep it in the pots till next year, and then plant them out. You can just do them straight on the ground. Some people actually plant their rootstocks ready, and then just crawl around on the ground doing the cuts and stick them straight on. But this is called bench grafting. These will have been shoved in the ground, so back to the cleanliness, because I've kept them all in the ground. They should be cut in the most dormant time, so it's getting really late now. So you could have cut them in December, January, February, and at that time you can either wrap them in newspaper and put them in the fridge, or just stick them in the ground outside. So you're going to find roughly the point along your rootstock. It's going to be quite high up. Ideally you'd want it down in this area. So that's been stuck in the ground, so I'm going to snip that off and get rid of the bottom inch. And what I'm doing is I'm snipping this just above the bud, so it gives me that space between the two buds to play with. So if it goes wrong, got another little bit to keep going up. I'm going to snip just above the bud. So you want to leave, some people say 2, but I leave 3 just for good luck. 1, 2, 3. 3 buds, a slight angle cut like a pruning cut. And that's your 3 chances of success. Okay. I'll cut that so I've got as much space as possible below the bud to join that. It won't work if you try and stick it on upside down. It won't grow downwards. So I'm going to match that somewhere around here. Up there. Just pushing it. We'll give it a go. That's scrap. So that means I've got all of this to play with. It is slightly different diameter, but I think I can cope with that. I'm not just going to stick it on like that. So that's going to go on there. So the nap now is you want a slanting cut. And it wants to cut about 5. You don't want it too long because it'll be too flimsy, and you don't want it too stubby because it will it'll be too not enough to slant again. Try not to do much. I wasn't concentrating then. Try and do it in 2 cuts if you can. That's way more than 2. It needs to make about 3/4, 2/3 contact with the cambium. So this bit doesn't matter, the inside. It's actually just the green bit under the bark, because that's where all the energy is going through the sap. So I'm going to try slightly longer. Slightly cut. I'm trying to get a round top so it's a pure oval. Right. There's enough of a connection with some tape on that. You want to do a slot parallel, so straight, not on an angle, because otherwise it will twist. Going straight in about just past the middle and the upside. Does that make sense? Not on the below side. You've got to sort of get your head into that. So it's always on the upside. And then it's only just a notch. This is when it slides into your finger. Because you don't want to put too much pressure. I'm just wiggling that in. And then I'm just going to open that. So just by wiggling it. And this is like a key. And then this one has exactly the same. So it's in the same place on the side. And then slide it in. And then hopefully that, as they slide together, will just tie together and lock in. Like. So I've got a bit of green showing there, or white green if you want. So I can just wiggle that to get the maximum connection. A bit more actually. That's why it helps to actually choose the right size. So I get some of this. This is grafting tape, and it's basically like cling film. So if it gets a chance, it joins to itself. So give it a wrap first through the rootstock, so around the bottom of the rootstock, and then just slowly pull it tight as you go up. Just keep turning it and make sure you hold on to the scion wood as you come up to the join. Pull it tight, hold it again, come up onto the wood, over the join, hold it really tightly on the join, and then you've got all the way up, start coming back down. See, you don't actually need that much. And that should just stay on until it's joined. And that will join in about 6 weeks. There we go, so you can take it home. What was the important thing we're not supposed to forget? Label.